Hiya, my name is Terry J. Amon, and welcome to this, my 23rd episode of Video Fuzzy. Happy Easter, everyone. This episode features comments on Franco Zeffirelli's 8-hour Jesus of Nazareth, featuring the entire 1970s. My Friday night feature looks at a Canadian production called Terminal City. I talk about Ghost in the Shell and We Bare Bears, and hey, this production turned out to be actually useful. Who'd have thought? Welcome to the show.
He doesn't have that on video, does he? We'll find out together on Video Fuzzy.
Before I get started, I wanted to expand a little on my comments from last time, episode 22, where I talked a bit about my personal faith journey. One tradition I have let lapse for the past 6 years or so while I have not had a functioning VHS player is my VHS copy of Jesus Christ Superstar has sat untouched on the shelf over Good Friday. For years, I would watch this stellar 1973 production as part of my Holy Week celebration. I remember that I did watch the 2000 update, but not very enthusiastically. It seemed dark and brooding compared to the hope woven through the version that I knew and loved. Now, thanks to Ralph, I've got a functioning VCR again, but this year I'm tuning into the production they're airing live Easter Sunday, April 1st on NBC, and probably available for a while on demand if you missed it. Looking forward to it.
Friday Night Feature.
In 2005, the CBC produced a series that took a gonzo, satirical Harley Quinn sledgehammer to the intersection of reality television and the destructive effects of cancer on a person's life in a 12-part series called Terminal City. The pilot episode, which aired here in 2008 on the Sundance Channel, showed up on disc 459 and left me hungry for more. Terminal City starred Maria Del Mar as suburban housewife Katie Sampson. Katie is not answering her phone because it's her doctor calling with bad news about her biopsy. She doesn't want to hear it. Her family is also not picking up the phone, which drives her all-too-present father-in-law crazy. Her father-in-law, Saul, is full of opinions about her and her children and her marriage and her cooking and her life, and he's always at the family dinner table telling everyone how they've all got to be. Katie's got different ideas. As we meet her at the top of this series, she's been scared about her chances for breast cancer for quite a while and is already reconstructing her relationship with her family and her life and her attitudes about shoulds and musts. We meet her in the opening flirtation between anger and bargaining and acceptance, the unfairness of the loss, the forced goodbyes when goodbyes are going to hurt so damn hard. It's not enough. Her youngest is 5. It's not enough time. She's not going to have enough time. Do not answer that phone. She needs more time. Screw it. She gets the news. And this show's spiral into the whirling, howling emotions of a terminal cancer patient begin aright. When we see her next, she's outside hitting golf balls just as hard as she can. At the neighbors. At their homes. She's channeling her rage and resentment into tiny, randomly destructive acts that bring phone calls and police inquiries, and her husband, he got there seconds before the cops showed up. Her husband, Ari, is fixing her a drink. Yes. If you knew his wife, this drink is absolutely the right thing to do in this situation. Katie goes in for follow-up consultations, bringing her daughter along for moral support. As it happens, a film crew is also walking the corridors of the hospital, filming Post-Op, an irrepressibly dull and ill-conceived reality show starring, if that word can apply to host Dr. Miles Hart, a doctor who manages to make his every interaction with patients he appears to happen upon randomly at the hospital. Every interaction is just awful and impersonal while being extremely impertinent and awkward. He encounters a young child whose reaction to him is to grunt and punch him in the face. He talks to an elderly man about his prostate issues, camera right in his face, asking him about any discomfort he's experiencing. It's really... A person could wonder how anyone signs off on the rights to be included in this production, and the production itself is not drawing any ratings. The cold, impersonal, self-important Dr. Hart fails to engage his audience, and his production team is at a loss as how to solve this problem. until the camera meets and falls head over heels in love with the, by comparison, endlessly charismatic cancer patient Katie Sampson, who is not only willing to share her story and talk about her poor prognosis on camera, but actually flashes a peek at her cancerous breast. The camera guy just about falls over backwards, and the production team is climbing all over itself to find out who is this shining new star, and can they get her to be funny and personable and outrageous on their show. In the meantime, her family is not handling the news well. Her teenage son starts smoking. Her daughter is mortified that mom flashed her breasts on live television. Oh, no one was watching, Katie says. Her youngest is vanishing into video games. As for Katie, it feels like she is taking this cancer diagnosis and laughing in its face, taking what little time she's got left to reflect on the absurdities of life, social obligations, and throwing "what will the neighbors think" out the window. I can't recall if I saved any episodes beyond the pilot episode, but damn, having found this one during my cataloging effort here, I really hope I did. This pilot episode set up a compelling story of a woman who loves her family and loves her life, facing an absolutely terrible situation. Critics complained the show made light of cancer, but the direction Terminal City took with this is also clearly intended to lampoon the intrusion of reality television into the human condition, up to and including humanity at its most desperate and private moments, and use this absurdity to explore the pain, loss, and heartbreak terminal illness leaves in its wake. When Kim Files affirmed in episode 21 that Quarter Life was the work that she was most proud of in her student career at Minot State, I had to believe that her powerful portrayal of towering intellectual Vivian Baring, the terminal cancer patient at the center of Margaret Edson's wit, ran a close second. I was mesmerized by the storytelling in that Minot State stage production of a show that ran on Broadway in 1995 and was adapted as a television movie starring Emma Thompson in 2001. The pain and rage and depth of humanity she presented in this character, a professor of 17th century English literature ripped apart by a disease she could not outthink or outsmart or address as a purely intellectual exercise. It was a work that explored human limitations and the lack of them. It was powerful. Such stories told well challenge us. They stretch our understanding of ourselves, and if I do not find more episodes of Terminal City in my classic collection, I will absolutely be tracking this down as a disc set through Amazon.com, where it looks like it's available for about $10. Yes, I'm aware of streaming services, but I'd still rather own the digital copy the way God intended. Thank you very much.
Diving into the classic collection.
Speaking of God's good plan, just in time for Easter, I encountered the History Channel's presentation of Franco Zeffirelli's 8-hour production of Jesus of Nazareth, broken across discs 452 through 455. It's a masterwork drawn from the best of all four gospel perspectives, reimagined from so many different sightlines, infused with humanity and coalescing in brilliant storytelling with a meticulous eye for detail and character, starring the best and the brightest acting talents alive at the time, and oh my holy God, it's 8 hours of the whitest possible Jesus, surrounded by the whitest imaginable cast to portray Middle Easterners since, oh, hey, any North Dakotan production of Godspell. The blonde, blue-eyed Christ stands out in all his scenes as something holy, ethereal, otherworldly. Even on the cross, his pain is subsumed by his physical beauty and the joy and peace and confidence you bring into all situations as the very being and presence of God. When he was examined by Caiaphas in the temple, he was asked pointedly if he claimed, as he would know as a learned Jew to be heresy, to be the Son of God. He claims it outright. Like he'd have to, though, am I right? I mean, anyone can just see it. Like, look at those eyes. Heck, Christ at his bar mitzvah was straight out of Children of the Corn. Aryan, lily-white Christ, where the heck did we find one of those out here? And it wasn't just Christ. Most of the rest of the cast was white as milk. The cast featured the entire 1970s, as demonstrated in the 3 or 4 minutes of credits at the beginning of each 2-hour segment, including Robert Powell as Jesus Christ, Anne Bancroft as Mary Magdalene, the whore from whom 7 demons were driven. Thou knowest that 6th demon will cost extra. Ernest Borgnine as the centurion. Surely this man was the Son of God. Claudia Cardinal as the adulteress. Hiya! Valentina Cortez Cortez as Herodias, James Ferrantino as Simon Peter, James Earl Jones as Balthazar,
Luke, I am thy father.
Stacy Keach as Barabbas, Tony LoBianco as Quintilius, James Mason as Joseph of Arimathea. Again, that is James Mason as Joseph of Arimathea, and not, as I'd originally read it, Jackie Mason as Simon of Cyrene.
Oh yeah, sure, that's quite a load to carry in there. You want us to carry that cross for you? I can carry that cross for you. Take a load off your hot, Michael.
Ian McShane as Judas Iscariot. That's Ian McShane, not Whose Line Is It Anyway improv talent Michael McShane.
Okay, what else? Betrayal. I need a show of affection and 30 pieces of silver.
Lawrence freaking Olivier as Nicodemus, Donald Pleasance as Melchior.
You only live twice, Mr. Christ.
Christopher Plummer as Herod Antipas, and Baron Von Trapp.
What a white Jesus Christ.
Anthony Quinn as Caiaphas and Zorba the Greek, Fernando Reyes as Gaspar, Ralph Richardson as Simeon, Rod Steiger as Pontius Pilate, Al Capone, and oh wow, Gordon Call. Tim Curry as Dr. Frankenfurter, Peter Ustinov as Herod the Great, Robert Redford as Bob Woodward, Linda Lovelace as Deep Throat, and Zero Mostel as Max Bialystock, Michael York as John the Baptist, and Basil Exposition. Christ, I'm here to baptize you.
Oh, behave.
Olivia Hussey as Mary. Cyril Cusack as Yehuda. Yes, we're just about the end of these, I promise. Ian Holm as whoever that was. And Yorgo Voyagas as Joseph. I think a few extra people snuck in there towards the end, but that's our show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for 8 hours of oy vey. I know it's a mini-series event, but we didn't need to experience the life of Christ in real time. As I mentioned up top there, near to the beginning of time by now, much more looking forward to watching NBC's live Jesus Christ Superstar event myself. Also turning up in my classic collection were Mike Myers' brilliant turn on James Lipton's Inside the Actors Studio. The show cut out halfway through, right during the portion of the interview where he was responding as Linda Rickman, but I'm pretty sure I've got it in its entirety somewhere in this collection, so if I keep going I'll almost certainly get to chat about the whole thing sometime. Another fun find was the puppet mastery of Team America World Police, the 2004 international relations farce from the creators of South Park. Holy just wow. And apart from the chorus of complaints stemming from the perfectly gripping 2017 movie that Scarlett Johansson wasn't Asian enough to play Major Motoko Kusanagi, a violet-haired soldier with a very nearly entirely cybernetic body. To be fair, the only part of her body that is genetically Asian is her brain. I've been enjoying the anime IG presentation of Ghost in the Shell, standalone complex on Adult Swim for years, first season episodes of which turned up this past week on discs 457, 458, and 459. This past year I discovered the series had a second season with a completely new opening and closing credits sequence, this one featuring some misspelling, so that was fun to catch. While I prefer the energy of VTech's Inner Universe as a lead-in for the show, the new second season credits are a little more efficient. I've been collecting these second season episodes as they've been airing on Toonami, Adult Swim's anime weekend presentation, which this weekend I discovered included some Japanese language presentations with subtitles, so that was cool to watch. Of course, Adult Swim can't go very long without including some seriously weird for the sake of weird presentations, so before long, Ralph and I found ourselves watching an animated nude fantasia of wildly technicolor dancers bouncing around to classical music with bamboo genitalia, why not? Which they do mention here and there. It's not intended for all audience, and I suppose on some level it's art, but at some point Adult Swim doesn't even pretend to frame narrative content at all, and the actual caveat we should see is you must be this high to enjoy this show, that level indicated by a cartoon dancer with a bamboo wang on top of a mountain with his hand way up near the top of the screen. But I digress. Oh, hey, Adult Swim's new tagline. What pulled me in originally to Ghost in the Shell standalone complex when I first encountered it in the mid-1990s... Wait. No, I guess it was the early 2000s. Well, there was a short animated movie series based on Ghost of the Shell Puppet Master manga that dated to the mid-90s, but it was probably the 2002 series I actually saw on Adult Swim. Anyway, what drew me in were the J.D. Salinger Catcher in the Rye references. I think the very first episode I saw involved Unit 9 investigator Major Kusanagi lurking in a chat room where people were discussing the Laughing Man, a terrorist protesting cyberbrain sclerosis, a disease developers of synthetic bodies were suppressing information about and tied in somehow to the Sunflower Society. I got drawn into the story of a hacker who was able to hack information from cyber components and manipulate people's experiences of reality. He kidnapped the CEO of Serrano Genomics, edited his image basically from the world, and generally sought revenge on the company that killed his father. If I'm remembering right, it's been a while. With Season 2 actually running Saturday nights now on Toonami, this is a rare instance of a series that actually crosses over into my current collection, so hey, we may as well just do that here too.
Current collection.
Welcome back to part 2 of my discussion of Ghosts in the Shell standalone complex. I already talked about seeing Scarlett Johansson in the movie last year, so on to my current recordings, which fed into my cataloging efforts in a quiet, unassuming way, and so far I haven't really touched on them. I enjoy this series, which explores a reimagined world of corporate imperialism in the year 2030, but my take on Season 2 is that it lacks the structure of an overarching story, the sort that guided and dominated Season 1. They may retcon one as the series closes out. I haven't gotten to the finale yet, but the conversation is explored whether fully mecha-tech comas can gain self-awareness and develop artificial intelligence through the consumption of natural oil, to which their handler, Bato, second in command at Section 9 behind Major Kusanagi, had introduced them. I don't know where that's going, where random stock purchasing hacks on personal computers has been leading, or if any of this has been going anywhere. Honestly, the team seems mostly to be responding mostly to random crimes this season, but I'll keep watching it, or sort of watching it, through the finale. Overall, it's a pretty cool, well-drawn, and eye-catching series, and I'd like to see where they're going with it. Speaking of cartoonish, I see where I pulled several episodes at once of The President's Show from last fall, but no, as it turns out, not that one I had to stream burn, episode 6, with a theme of loyalty. Honestly, I've made peace with the fact that I'm not responsible for archiving every minute of satirical Trump coverage that anyway is totally available all over the place. It's not like I have lots of spare time to track down and watch and enjoy many past episodes of much of anything anyway. That said, I'm looking forward to the series resume of this show coming up shortly here on Comedy Central. What else? Well, I see from my catalog a few films I forgot to mention I watched while Ralph was out of town in December, including Deja Vu on AMC starring Denzel Washington in 2006, The Adjustment Bureau from 2011 on Sci-Fi, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome from 1985 also on Sci-Fi, Sleepy Hollow from 2013 starring Johnny Depp, the speculative interdimensional animated feature The Justice League Crisis on Two Earths from 2010 on Sci-Fi, the also animated Justice League Doom from 2012 on Sci-Fi, and finally, again on, oh hey, check it out, Sci-Fi, the live-action fantasy Immortals from 2011. Gotta say, I forgot mentioning a lot of what I watched that weekend. I guess that's the impression most of it made when I was putting episode 15 together. Sorry. I did talk about seeing the Carol Burnett special, which was just awesome, and there's an episode I found of We Bare Bears that so far is just my favorite installment from this series, which has elsewhere, for example, featured Grizz in Grizz Helps, where a young, upbeat grizzly bear wanders his neighborhood helping people best he can. Not great, but seriously fun to watch, and among other things, thwarts a time travel caper and reunites an elderly woman with her pet chicken. In the episode I found this go-around, Ranger Games. The Girl Scout troop called the Poppy Rangers meet up with their rivals, the Ivy Rangers, to play softball. They always lose and the girls are despondent about the matchup, but this year troop leader Ranger Tabes has a secret weapon. It's Grizz, cheering them on, dressed as a big flower. I swear this episode with a bear dressed as a flower makes me happier than honestly it should, but I can't help it. It's so sweet. Positive energy winning the day is such a great feeling, and if that wasn't enough, there was a timeout at one point which introduced us so randomly to a phenomenon known as the Martinez Music Minute. So friggin' adorbs. I love it. Finally, a comment on the Season 8 Bob's Burgers two-parter Christmas special, The Bleakening. Bob's Burgers matriarch Linda Belcher is inspired in a dream to throw a Christmas party and invite the neighborhood to rekindle everyone's Christmas spirit. But things aren't going so well. For one thing, the Jersey Wharf District's gay bar, the Wiggle Room, has been forced to close and spirits are down. There's also a mysterious figure running about who seems to have stolen the Belcher's Christmas tree and Linda's favorite ornaments that the kids made for her along with it. So they investigate and are led to an underground rave where Linda tracks her tree and calls the police. But the rowdy rave is actually the Christmas party that the Wiggle Room would have been holding if they hadn't been shut down, and Linda feels bad. But then Bob wriggles into the mysterious figure's hooded and feathered costume and leads the police on a chase away from the rave, and the rave is saved. My favorite moment of this episode will make no sense, but it's after Linda spills that she's called the police. Bob spies recurring drag character Marshmallow in the crowd. "Hi, Marshmallow," he calls. Marshmallow sniffs, My face, you can't see it, but it smiles at this. Fun Christmas special.
What I've been watching.
See, sometimes you've got this great idea, and there's certainly discussion to be had and material there to unpack, but darn the luck, your actual lawyer character is hopelessly locked away in a who-cares subplot, so you're left with Grace Adler and Karen Walker to take on freedom of commercial speech vis-a-vis the baking and decoration and sale of cakes. Yep. A recent Will and Grace stranded Will in the weeds, digging an old flame gold digger, Michael, a handsome trainer, worming his way back into Will's life. He's opening his own gym, and after a whirlwind reconnection, he asked Will to invest with the kind of emotional buildup one might use in proposing marriage. Useless throwaway B story introduces and dismisses a non-character in order to refresh our memories about why Will and Jack aren't a thing, already forgetting that Jack's exploring a committed relationship with a formerly closeted cop from Staten Island, who the show has dubbed the Staten Island Fairy, because this show really hasn't ever reached that high, which from this past week's episode it looks like they're already done with. So that left Lucy and Ethel to take on the gay wedding cake conversation. Karen wants a MAGA cake to celebrate Trump's birthday, and the neurotic, emotionally overwrought small business owner Amy is standing up for herself, saying that no, she does not wish to make a MAGA cake. Despite New York being stuffed with bakeries who sure why not would bake this cake, despite Trump and his supporters not being an actually repressed minority, they found Amy, a principled liberal shop owner who they could ultimately bully into crafting this cake. Which, again, specifically from the other point of view, why would you ever ask someone who's actively opposed to the making of it to do so? You have no idea what they're going to put in it, and yeah, I've seen the 2011 movie The Help. So at first Grace is outraged that they refuse to bake the cake, and then she learns that it's a pro-Trump cake and she changes her mind about her outrage. But Karen physically being inside this little shop means that this is the shop that needs to make this cake for her, and Grace forces herself to make the argument that the shop owner is, yes, obligated to make it, which, against every motive force in Amy's being, she does, and decorates it. But can't stop herself from adding letters to the MAGA cake to make it read, "I'm a gay." It's an I and an apostrophe ahead of the MAGA and a Y afterwards. Very clever. Grace asks Amy to remove the extra letters, arguing it's not a cake for the vice president. I noted that those letters would be very easy to scrape off after they left the shop, but it was clearly funnier for Grace's face to end up in that cake. I had trouble with this episode. Ralph was actively angry about it. I think I've seen signs all over the place, and I don't know how enforceable they are, that say something like, "This establishment reserves the right to refuse service to anyone." If someone asked Amy to decorate a cake with pornography, or, as they were ordering them by the end of the episode, with swastikas and neo-Nazi propaganda, I suspect that Amy would get a pass. In the show, Amy had to simply ignore her physical revulsion and make the cakes her customers ordered. So, that's the world for right-wingers too, though. So, was that the argument? To demonstrate to Will and Grace's presumably liberal elite target audience that this is what it was like to ask a right-wing Trump supporter to bake a gay wedding cake? We know this. The argument was on First Amendment protections claimed as being against their religion. The court affirmed that if the business is open to the public and making cakes for weddings, they have to make them for all weddings, specifically because in rural areas there might not be an elsewhere competitor customers could take their business to. None of this really is the case for Karen, mind you, who could honestly buy that shop, fire the baker, and order whatever she wanted. But I somehow got the feeling that this was an episode that got rewritten a lot before it got pooped out onto our screen. I suspect it was an idea they had. They wanted to do a gay wedding cake episode, a current LGBTQ issue and all that, and bringing Will into that story, given that he's actually still Karen's lawyer, I believe, probably got too realistic and required too much actual legalese, and besides, they wanted to explore Will and Jack's relationship for new viewers, I guess. So, ultimately, there wasn't really an A story for this one. Instead, there was a B story and an issue story. It was very disappointing. So many other shows. The Magicians are closing in on their finale. I've actually got the Versace finale on my DVR waiting for me to get a chance to view it, and more episodes of The Alienist, which from what I've managed to see so far seem to be closing in on The Killer. And I did make a bit of headway of Supernatural, but mostly I cannot wait to get through Season 12 to Season 13, especially for the crossover fun I got a sneak peek at this past week when Sam and Dean end up in an episode of Scooby-Doo. That's just... wow. I cannot wait to see how they got there and what happens. They did have a sort of cartoony adventure in the Season 8 live-action caper Hunter I Heroicy, which... wow, I just got that was a Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner reference, featuring Mike Farrell of MASH as a nursing home resident who spends his days watching Looney Tune cartoons and is inadvertently warping reality around him with Toonland physics. This past week's Season 13 episode goes full immersion into animation, and I can't wait to see how it plays out. And oh yeah, lest I forget, this project recently proved to be actually useful to me. Here's what's going on. With the recent death of Stephen Hawking, it occurred to me that while a fan, I'd never gotten around to reading his popular work, A Brief History of Time, which I determined to rectify. I've mostly gotten all the way through that one, or rather a version updated to reflect more recent scientific discoveries, which, having read 3 works by Brian Greene, most recently I reread his 2011 work, The Hidden Reality, Parallel Universes and Deep Laws in the Cosmos, mostly laid in the groundwork necessary for me to understand Hawking's book, which is not a technical read. The most complicated equation in the work is Einstein's summary E=mc², but it requires some active reimagination of the world around us to get through. And as I came to the end of it, I wanted to track down something new to read. I realized I'd been reading a lot of guy authors recently. I recently finished Caleb Carr's sequel to The Alienist, The Angel of Death, which absolutely explored some feminine themes, but the last female author I'd read cover to cover, I think, was Sue Grafton's Y is for Yesterday, which... it just broke my heart that with her passing, we'll never get any final resolution on 1980s private investigator Kinsey Milhone's life, her unresolved family issues, and whatever surprises she was planning for Z, which I've got to believe she's been writing these things and developing this character since the 1980s. I'm sure she was planning something. And then I remembered an interview I'd saved from the Colbert Report, where he was interviewing a female physicist about a book she'd written that, at the time I cataloged it, I thought it'd be cool to read sometime. I for sure at that moment could not remember anything about her or it, though, and both me and my Nook were stuck at work, far away from my PC, where my catalog listing is. It at that moment occurred to me that my catalog is also available wherever my phone is. This project is also a blog, and that blog is available on my phone. At my next break, I clicked around a bit, and before too long, I located my blog entry, catalog post number 19, with my listing for disc 413, featuring Stephen Colbert's interview with Lisa Randall about her recent book, Warped Dimensions. Well, since I just finished rereading Brian Greene's work on the multiverse and Stephen Hawking's take on the same topic, I wasn't sure I needed a third take on pretty much the same subject. Fortunately, Dr. Randall is a reasonably prolific author, and given my recent theological discussion, I was intrigued by her work, Knocking on Heaven's Door, How Physics and Scientific Thinking Illuminate the Universe in the Modern World. I pulled up a sample, was pleased with her initial approach, projected accessibility, and conversational tone, and decided to pull the trigger and buy it. So, from an interview conducted more than a decade ago, I've checked into a new writer, new for me anyway, to further explore topics of interest that might otherwise have fallen by the wayside. In short, my cataloging effort has guided me to a writer I'd otherwise have completely forgotten about, and now it seems I've got some cool new thing to read at work once I've finished reading Stephen Hawking, Resquiescat in Pace. And with that, thank you so much for checking in on my video cataloging project. It seems we all can check out my catalog listing from anywhere, along with audio links at videofuzzy.blogspot.com and past episodes of this podcast at Apple Podcasts and iTunes and videofuzzy.libsyn.com. Feedback is always appreciated, and you can contact me through my blog or podcast sites or through my Video Fuzzy page on Facebook. For Video Fuzzy, I'm Terry J. Amon. Happy viewing.
It might be amazing, it might just be scuzzy. We'll find out together on Video Fuzzy.